Barbecue smoke filled the air with its smell carried on the late afternoon wind as I observed three police cruisers arrive at my homestead. Amidst the smoke from the grill stands, I noticed the officers emerging, serious faces, as they walked towards our otherwise serene get-together by the pond. The chatter froze mid-sentence. Half-eaten burgers on plates remained uneaten. Children's laughter dissolved into awkward silence. But I just grinned and picked up the folder I'd been leaving on the picnic table for the past 3 weeks. I'd been waiting for this moment. 9 minutes. That's all it took to utterly demolish Karen Thornberry's dictatorial reign over our neighborhood. 9 minutes to see her self-satisfied face contort into shock, panic, and ultimately irrefutable defeat. But I'm jumping ahead. My name is David Parsons, and I inherited 40 acres of prime land from my grandfather 15 years ago, including a serene 3-acre pond that's been in our family for 4 generations. When Grandpa died, he left behind not only land, but a treasure house of deeds and records that went back as far as 1892. I constructed my residence on the east side and maintained the pond and surrounding acres as a natural preserve, always open to neighbors who found beauty in its existence. Then came Oak Ridge Estates. Around a decade ago, the HOA extended its borders, and somehow, by either bureaucratic ineptness or flat-out fraud, they started trying to assert jurisdiction over my pond. I'd been running my consulting practice and didn't bother reading their newsletters. I never signed their covenants, never submitted dues, and flat-out forgot the HOA even existed. That all changed 6 months ago when Karen Thornberry took office as president. Karen had moved into Oak Ridge Estates 3 years ago, clipboard in hand, lips pursed, and on a crusade to restore community standards. Within months, she made our quiet neighborhood into a hell of code enforcement and quasi-autocratic rule. Grass too high? Okay. Mailbox the improper color? Ticket. Having a barbecue? Better have HOA permission 48 hours beforehand. When she first stepped onto my property, I was instructing my nephew in how to fish. She stormed up to the water's edge in designer shoes, brandishing laminated HOA regulations like she was passing down royal proclamations. She told me that all water features needed to be registered and that fishing needed her signed permit. I kindly explained to her that it was private property. She snorted and said, "All of Oak Ridge Estates is covered by HOA." That evening, I went rummaging through Grandpa's boxes, and what I unearthed made me laugh out loud. Not only was I the outright owner of the pond and the land surrounding it, 20 acres, but a historic survey map uncovered something extraordinary. For 10 years, the HOA had been using 2 acres of my land for their walking path, without so much as permission, payment, or even acknowledgement. I phoned up my old buddy James Morrison, attorney. He verified it. The HOA had no right to my land. None whatsoever. James did, however, offer some sage advice. Don't call them out yet. Let them dig their own grave. Document everything. So I did. Every incursion, every threatening letter, every occasion Karen stood on my gate, phone in hand, yelling about violations. I documented them all. 3 weeks ago, she sent me a formal notice. Comply with HOA rules or legal proceedings? That's when I threw a barbecue. I invited personally 30 families I'd known for years, over for a Memorial Day barbecue near the pond. No channels of the HOA, just neighbors. 25 families RSVP'd. I rented a barbecue truck, installed chairs, and even brought a sound system. All by the book, no county ordinances broken. The party was flawless. Children splashed in the pond. Adults drank, laughed, unwound. For the first time in months, we again felt like a community. And then, Karen arrived. She stormed into the party like a tempest, cheeks red with anger, clipboard held like a club. She yelled that this party broke 17 HOA regulations. I calmly invited her to take a burger. That was her breaking point. She whipped out her phone and loudly declared that she was calling the police for an illegal assembly, noise violations, and unauthorized commercial vendors. While pacing at what appeared to be the HOA boundary, I got out my folder. When the police showed up, Sergeant Wallace, a regular at local affairs, approached me directly. I was quietly flipping burgers as Karen hovered nearby, bristling with rage. He asked if I owned the property and what the problem was. I showed him the folder. He studied the papers patiently. Original deeds, survey maps, tax records, and a cease and desist letter drafted by James. While he read, two other officers interviewed Karen. Her voice rang out across the yard, charging me with criminal trespass on my own property. Sergeant Wallace's demeanor changed as he compared my map to county documents on his patrol computer. Then, with Officer Bennett, he walked up to Karen in silence. From where I was in the yard, I watched it happen. Her face locked up, then contorted. She began shaking her head, voice increasing to a steady scream, then a shriek. Sergeant Wallace came back to me and validated what we both already knew. The land belonged to me. The HOA didn't have any authority, and they had been trespassing for decades. He asked if I wanted to file charges. I said no, not yet, and gave him the cease and desist letter. Karen tried to intervene but was gently blocked by Officer Bennett. Then came the moment I'll never forget. In front of the entire gathering, Sergeant Wallace read portions of the letter aloud. It demanded the HOA immediately stop claiming authority over my land, remove all signage within 7 days, and cease further harassment. It also informed them that continued use of the walking trail would require an easement agreement and compensation. Karen's face went through the entire color spectrum. She began to rage, shout about lawyers and lawsuits. The officers reminded her that lying about a crime is a criminal act, and really urged her to be on her way. She took off, shouting that this wasn't over, and that she'd bankrupt me in court. Wallace, serene as always, responded, "Ma'am, harassment is also a crime." Then what? The barbecue was in full swing. News traveled fast. Neighbors requested to review the documents. Tom, fined $300 for a mailbox color, wept. 3 days later, I arrived at the mail with a letter from the attorney of the HOA contesting the property line. James replied with a ruthless package. All records, 10 years of unpaid land use estimations, images of Karen trespassing, and transcripts of her threats. The threat was abandoned in 48 hours. At the following HOA meeting, Karen was turned against by the community. She attempted to spin it as though she was being protective of everyone, but when board treasurer announced that fighting this case would run $200,000, not counting damages, it was done. The no confidence vote passed 38-2. Her only two supporters? Her VP and a woman everyone assumed was her sister. Karen had a tantrum, yelling she'd ruin our lives. The board president quietly reminded her that threats made during an official meeting were being taped. 2 weeks later was the coup de grace. Karen, as it happens, was a compliance officer with a regional bank. Someone, no one knows who, sent them a video compilation of threats, trespassing, and abuse of authority. She was put on administrative leave while under investigation. Next, the sheriff's office charged her with abuse of emergency services for the false police report. It is a $5,000 fine. Her witnesses say that when she was served the summons in what was once her reserved HOA parking space, she sat in her vehicle for 20 minutes, just looking at the paper. Tom says her face told it all. Not anger, not even denial. She finally realized that all her HOA power plays hadn't made her important. They'd made her a criminal with a court date and a $5,000 fine. If you've ever dealt with an overreaching HOA or power-hungry neighbor, smash that like button and share this story, because this time, justice was served fresh off the grill. Comment below if you've ever had to stand your ground against an HOA bully. I'm reading every single story.